Welcome to this Shortwave radio channel, and this is the full review of the Choyong LC90 smart radio and Longwave, Mediumwave, Shortwave receiver, and FM, of course. It is pretty much the first radio in the world to mix in all of the capabilities. This is the first time a radio has shortwave and is also an internet radio at the same time. I'm not aware of any other radios that do that right now. So, before I start my review, because it's going to be a little hard on the receiver, but we got to give him, one kudos is just to say that they have tried something that's never been done, but unfortunately, it falls short in many aspects, and which is sad. And I've seen somebody today say that they're returning is because he's kind of not really happy with it, and I can see why you might not be happy with this radio. So this, of course, is a nice package. It's big, like if you own a Texan PL990X, it's about that size, the same size as the Texan PL990, but it does a lot more than that. So first, if we look at the different buttons, we've got the tuning knobs. The one at the top is for bigger steps. Then you have the fine tuning knob here, and you've got a volume with an off switch. The buttons are metal. They're not plastic, so this does give it a feel of a high quality radio. The front-facing panel with the buttons punching frequencies, and there's all sorts of things in here because it's an internet radio. If you press menu, for example, you'll get into the menu where you can choose different stations you might want to hear on the internet when it's connected to Wi-Fi. Because this is a connected radio, you have to connect it to your Wi-Fi for it to work. And it's a complex radio. It has a lot of features, and it has single sideband. It's a communications receiver because it does cover up to 29.999 kilohertz, or 29.999 kilohertz, and all the shortwave bands, amateur bands. The single sideband feature is a great add-on to this because the original did not have it, but they added the feature. You have to understand also how to use it. Each button here clicks, which makes you do selections of different things in the radio. So when you're in a menu, you want to try something, you click on it and it will bring you something else. You see here it's like blinking the meter band, and if I click on the other one, it blinks the bandwidth. So it has multiple bandwidths. It is obviously based on the DSP chips that most radios use for AM, FM, shortwave, for sure. And of course, it adds the internet radio capability to this receiver. The battery is enclosed in here, and there are two hexagonal type screws. It's like you need an Allen key basically to open this. I haven't checked what type of battery, but I can tell you one thing. Is I left it on yesterday for 12 hours, and the battery indicator was still 3/4 the way. So the battery seems to last quite a long time. It doesn't seem to be a battery hog. And of course, you can charge it. You've got external antenna capability right here. You have the charging part right here, and you have the earphone right here with stereo FM, of course. Not the best placement. It would have been nice if these, instead of being next to the knobs, would have been on the other side where it's empty. That would have been a much more ergonomic way of doing it. In practice, yeah, of course, if you put the external antenna here, it does. You have to tune. You still tune, but it's not the same way because it kind of blocks your hand when you tune. So that's not the best idea in the world. But it works, and I'm not going to complain too much about that one, even though they could have been placed on the other side. The display is absolutely superb, so whatever you do, whatever you stream, if you go and get an internet radio, so for example, here I'm going to go into the menu, I'm going to choose any internet radio. Let's see here, Europe. And of course, it searches for the internet radio stations when you're Wi-Fi connected. So here's BBC Radio, and you have BBC World Service. You click, and now it loads because it's going to buffer the station, so you have good audio and good note drop downs in streaming. So here we go, and gives you this. Gives you absolutely beautiful audio.
Oh, what about the atmosphere, Michael? We may not get that electric atmosphere.
So the display, of course, is made to display all the information needed for whatever you want to try, whatever you want to listen to. You can listen to a streaming station. You can listen to podcasts. There's a voice way of asking what you want. It's not the perfect. I have a hard time using the vocal commands to try to have it. It doesn't seem to understand me very well. Of course, buttons for all sorts of things. You've got the buttons for the presets. If you want to keep something in a preset, you press a button, and you can also, it gets into what is your favorite station, so you'll have a list of your favorites and all of that. And of course, Bluetooth, you can play audio through it, through Bluetooth, and you can also play any memory card that you want, little SD cards, micro SD cards, and listen to whatever's on there. So it's pretty nice for that. So even though it says FM, AM, shortwave, smart radio, the funny thing about it is that if you go on Mediumwave, and so here's Mediumwave, with my traffic station here. And if you press Mediumwave again, you will have the Longwave band available. So let's start with the ugly. The ugly is Longwave and Mediumwave. Very difficult to really have a good use. It's so noisy in the lower frequencies that even Mediumwave is kind of a hit and miss, and there's a chance that even your strongest stations might not make it, which is a big problem, and it all has to do with internal noise generated inside this receiver that does that. On shortwave, what you got to understand on shortwave is that you see here, it seems to be like a station or something. Every 30, 40, 50 kilohertz roughly, there's a birdie. So it's a spurious signal generated from inside a radio. And that means that you have to wish that you're lucky when you tune the stations. And I'm not joking, as you will tune some stations. If they fall on a birdie, you're out of luck with the telescopic antenna. That station is going to have a big hum or a big tone over it, and it's the internal circuit birdies that fall, and there's nothing you can do about it. So that means some stations are going to tune and are going to like, okay, I can't tune on this one. Now, the birdie problem does go away when you tune using an external antenna. So I put the MLA30 here, and the birdies pretty much go away because now you're switching to an external antenna that is far away from the circuit of the radio. This would have been great if it wasn't that it's easy to overload. So a lot of the stations will be heard over some of the stations you want to hear. So it doesn't help. You'll have to limit how long the long wire antenna or whatever antenna you use is, because yeah, it does overload. I saw somebody today said on a local AM station where he lives actually is heard over shortwave broadcasts as soon as he plugs in an external antenna. So it has a hard time to cope with external antennas. If it would not have been that, it could have been an interesting radio for at least somebody that uses external antennas all the time. Now, if you live far away from any powerful stations, there is Paul Walker in Alaska that said, well, here everything's weak. I wonder if it'd be an interesting choice on shortwave with the external antenna. Maybe if you live somewhere where it's, there's no real strong signals around you, it could become a good radio for the purpose of using it with an external antenna. And because the birdies go away, then you have pretty good reception. I've tuned the handbands yesterday with the single sideband. So when you press the shortwave button, you'll see that you'll cycle through upper lower sideband. And although so you hear the birdie here. So this is the birdie from within the radio. It works well in receiving single sideband. Then again, it has a very weird quirk of tuning single sideband. If it's something that I've seen on Texan receivers that they fixed, like the Texan PL330, before we were at version 3306 in firmware, the tuning of single sideband was awkward and backwards. And on 3306, they got it right. They fixed it. It works great. Well, this radio suffers from that backwards tuning. So instead of going the normal direction for upper or lower sideband, it actually tunes the other way. But you have to add another problem to it. You'll have to switch kilohertz sometimes to get a clearer voice, which will happen and you're going to be able to tune. But the problem is the display is inaccurate when you do that. You're tuning off. So an example, yesterday I was listening to local hams here in Quebec, and they were on 7125 lower sideband. On 7125, they were a little low key, so to have the correct tone for the voice, I actually had to tune 7126.8, which should have been 7124.8. So it gives you an idea that if you want to tune correctly sometimes, you'll completely be off frequency. When the tone falls correctly, you're fine. The frequency displayed is okay. It's really when you want to fine-tune the voice tone. But it's still very accurate from the box, so not all signals you're going to want to do that. Still, it's a quirk that shouldn't be. And so it makes single sideband tuning sometimes tricky because you get to figure out where to tune it to get the proper tone, which is something that shouldn't happen. It is sensitive on shortwave, and it's sad that it has the birdies and that weird single sideband problem, because if it wasn't for that, yeah, I'd give this radio a very high grade, but unfortunately we can't because, like I said, Longwave, Mediumwave is horrible, and shortwave, if you're lucky that the station you're listening to doesn't have a birdie, telescopic, going to be fine. So, it's a hit or miss kind of thing. This is where I kind of find it a little funny when I see the Farpoint Farm video where the best radio in the world. That guy obviously either is clickbaiting or has no idea what a good radio is, because he obviously doesn't know or doesn't. I don't know. I don't think he even tested it personally. So there's all of these quirks, and that's where it's sad, because this could have been a great, great radio for shortwave. Anybody that wants to have a package that does it all. And I see a lot of comments, people saying, why do they do these complex radios and put internet radios in there? It's a shortwave radio. I'm not there. I'm happy that somebody's doing it. I personally find that, yes, if you can do it right, put tons of stuff in the radio. Absolutely. I want to have an internet radio with shortwave. I do. And I'm not into the, internet radio shouldn't be with shortwave. I don't understand people saying that, because it's like, come on, let the radios be what they are, but do it right. And that's where I think if I have something to say to Choyong, because they might be working on another radio or something, is do it right on the second one. Because if you do, you're going to have a lot of people that will want to buy a radio like this. But it has to be done right. And that's where the problem is unless you shield really, really, really well the different parts of the circuit. The more electronics you get in a radio, the more chances you have a noisy radio on shortwave and medium wave. And that's what's happening with this radio, which unfortunately is sad because it's so beautiful. The thing that works best is its internet radio capability. That works great. I have a St. Gian WFR32 here, and I can tell you this connects better than my St. Gian WFR32, which costs as much as this and doesn't have any radio capability except streaming. One thing that came out, and of course, a lot of you have been burned by that, and it's the aggregator used for the radio. I don't know what aggregator they use for this. One thing for sure is that I wouldn't be surprised it's the same one that the Sanjin is using right now. Because the biggest problem that we have is, if you guys remember, when Receiva shut down, a lot of internet radios became big bricks that just doesn't do much. And that is definitely something to worry about. The good news here is that this radio has firmware, and that firmware can be updated. So if something would happen, I guess in a firmware update, there could be we'll change the aggregator, or we'll change things, which was something that most internet radios cannot do. Their firmware upgrades, fix things, but they really didn't do anything else. Here, they could technically change the aggregator, do a lot of modifications within. This has the latest firmware right now, which is dated April 12th, so it's really the latest firmware. It does updates over Wi-Fi, so basically if you want to upgrade your firmware or check for a new firmware, it's in the settings button here at the top, which is a little settings wheel or button, and that brings you into the different settings of your radio inside. Backlight can be turned on and left on, which is what I choose, what I like. And even with the backlight on, the radio battery life is pretty good. Now, what about the menus? I gotta say, it's a little awkward to go through the menus and to search for stuff and do things. You gotta kind of learn your way around the way it works. But it isn't that tough if you play with the buttons. If you're not afraid to go and click everywhere like I do, you'll get the hang of it at some point, and it's not going to be too bad. So it's a first try. Unfortunately, it comes short in the radio department. If you're medium wave, DXer, forget about it. Long wave, same thing. Shortwave, hit or miss. If you find that it's still an interesting product, go for it. I'm happy to have one. I find it fun to play with. It's a nice radio toy to dabble with. But unfortunately, most people at the price point where it is will say, well, I'm not going to buy a radio that on shortwave and medium wave and long wave doesn't perform very well or has tons of birdies. It's totally understandable, especially if shortwave will be your primary focus. Yeah, unfortunately, this would be a pass. It's not probably not worth it. Hopefully, maybe a next version that they will do will have all of those quirks fixed. And of course, I'll have more videos talking about this radio and showing you some of the features and going through the menus and stuff. So I'll be making a playlist actually, which will be Choyong LC90. So if you want to check it out, there's the link to the Choyong Radio website in the description below. And that was my review of the Choyong LC90 long wave, medium wave, FM, shortwave, smart radio. If you enjoy my videos, please subscribe, give us thumbs up. Thanks for watching.